just keep in mind that the other person still has their stuff and their perception. That your perception of their stuff may not be how you want to respond.
Welcome to the Midweek Motivation Podcast, where we bring practical help for your faith and life. Here's today's episode. Hey, welcome to Midweek Motivation. We are excited to jump into this week's episode. I'm here with Nancy Casteel. How you doing, Nancy?
I'm good.
Good.
How are you, Gabe?
I'm doing good. And my name is Gabe Kolstad, and we're just really diving deep today into a topic around kind of emotional health, mental health, dragons, dandelions. That's the series our church has been in.
Yep. And if people are going dragons and dandelions, what are you talking about? If you haven't listened to the teaching last Sunday, please do. And the other one, I think there was one other one.
Yeah, I think we're a couple weeks in.
And then if you
Sundays.
Also haven't heard Danny, and I forgot his last
Danny
name.
Clinton. Yes, we had him on last week for the podcast.
For his Midweek Motivation. It was absolutely wonderful.
Yeah.
And
he's fantastic.
Yeah, definitely check that out.
Okay, well, let's frame this up a little bit today, because one of the things that we were talking about that got us interested in being here today was there's dragons and then there's dandelions.
And I think of those in my work over the years as a psychologist and coach. I have thought, I've used the terms big deal and little deal. Way more technical than dragons and dandelions. Yeah. Kidding. But so I've used those terms, especially when I work with kids.
Yeah.
But kids and families, but really anybody.
Yeah.
And so we can use, I came with props today. So those of you who are listening, I have just a little bucket with little deals or dandelions on it, and I have a big deal bucket. Okay. And we're going to come to those in just a little bit. I want to focus today because I was, last Sunday, you talked about slaying dragons.
Yeah.
Slaying our dragons. Okay. And dragons there's no doubt there are some real dragons or big deals in our life. We could have to deal with illness. We could have to deal with people that we love dying. There's all sorts of big deals, serious financial issues, blah, 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 blah. In parenting, there's a whole host of big deals.
Right.
Okay. And then there's maybe contrived big deals, meaning things that we see as big deals that maybe actually wouldn't necessarily warrant the same energy that we would want to give if we had a death in the family or something like that.
Yeah.
But we are giving it. And then we have little deals or dandelions. Okay. So I'm going to talk about 3 different things today. My 3 words that I would want you to walk away with. So if you have a pen and paper and you want to write them down, you will be in such better mental health by the end if you write down perception, differentiation, and accountability.
Okay. Perception,
differentiation and accountability.
All right.
There you go. I'm out. Peace out. See you later.
Nice. Okay.
And what am I meaning by that? So if we're talking about dandelions or dragons, because this coming Sunday, you're going to talk about dandelions, which are the little deals.
The little deals.
But they can sometimes add up and feel like one big, like life can feel like one big deal. But they can also
that's so true, isn't it? If you got a lot of those things, it does 100%. Really feel like a big
Absolutely. Deal. And so it's trying really honestly to keep perspective. I guess I should have had a 4th word for today, that all of these things, if you do all of these things, they equal a better perspective.
Okay. That's great.
And so the perception is kind of, if you think about it, it's, because if we have big deals and little deals, the first thing, if we're going to throw an event that occurs into one of these buckets, we have to be able to perceive, is it a big deal or a little deal? What is our perception? And again, I just said a second ago that you can think of sometimes more things that are, and see them as big deals when maybe they actually aren't worth the kind of energy that you would put towards a significant, true big deal. Does that make sense?
Oh, does it ever? And I mean, I think personally, having been through plenty of little deals and some big deals, sometimes it's a little hard to tell the difference when you're the one in the middle of it.
Oh, totally.
So,
totally. Well,
yeah.
and I think so if we think about perception, what is our perception? How do we perceive things? Well, what influences how we perceive things? So much of that has to go back to, I mean, it can go all the way back. If you're an adult, I mean, whether you're a kid or an adult, it's how were you raised? What was the stress tolerance of your mom when you were raised, or your dad?
Interesting.
Just there's so many things. And now I'm talking more like adults, because we don't think about that a lot of times when we're in the midst of our busy lives.
Yeah.
We think just about today and life, and no, that's it. Okay, this is a big deal. And the other, I left out the idea that we could also dismiss some big deals as little deals because we're just sort of juggling too much.
Or you could say those words to somebody else, like calm down, it's not such a big deal.
Right. And people, or I think we really need to do something about this when you're like, that's fine. Listen, I'm not going to worry about that right now. It's funny because I think about like working with families. I have a lot of families that'll come in and go, and like my son and his bedroom and blah 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 blah. And my slant on that is the bedroom is a little deal in the scheme of everything you're trying to do when you're parenting, as long as they're not doing biological experiments with the food plates from 6 weeks ago. If there's a biological experiment
Safety
happening,
is important.
Yes, then maybe you make it a little bit bigger deal. But typically, that's going to be a little deal in my world. It may not be in yours. But
I mean, on this side of parenting, Melissa and I, our kids are my oldest, as we record this, just turned 25 in his time zone. And so, we're a ways from those days.
Yep.
But one of the things that we've talked about a lot of times is how we probably would change how big a deal we made out of some things.
Yeah.
As parents now, and it's just kind of like that hindsight. You're like, oh, I guess the world wasn't crumbling when there was food in the room,
right?
Or something like that.
But again, if I just take a half a second, sorry guys, I'm just gonna have a session with Gabe for a second.
Oh, this would be great.
This
is gonna be
with
really
Gabe
great.
and Melissa, because if you think about Melissa's mom passing away, and that's a huge deal.
Was a big one.
That's a massive, monstrous deal. So are some other things going to now maybe move down into little deals? Because when you have experienced the really big deals in life, it definitely makes a lot of the stuff that occurs in humanity reduce to much smaller deals.
Yeah.
If you're able, well, I guess it could do one of two things. It could either make everything seem like a big deal, because if you didn't process and get to some point of equilibrium, if that stress kind of sits with you all the time, then maybe you're perceiving everything, or you're catastrophizing, and everything can become a big deal.
Yeah.
Or maybe you then go, man, I know, my husband died, but I'm married to Matt and love Matt. My husband, Trevor, died of cancer. And everything since then has been put in a different perspective.
Sure.
Because things that I used to think would be a big deal are very much anything but. Now, I obviously have my own moments of weakness, but that's all in that perception. Everything that brings us to today feeds into how we perceive today and tomorrow, and the people in today and tomorrow, and the events, the presidential election, anything like that. It all factors in. And can a human body decide that everything is a big deal and do very well? No, because that's like saying, okay, I'm just going to be on high alert all the time. And because high alert is what I need when I'm dealing with a big deal. Okay, that's why we'll move into differentiation. That's why differentiating.
I want to park in. I got one thing I want to ask about
Absolutely.
the perception.
Sorry.
No, that's okay.
Moving.
I'm like fascinated with this word perception.
Yeah.
Because I feel like I've gotten it wrong so many times.
Oh yes, that's right. We were going to talk about.
Well, it's okay. No,
else.
It's all right. I just think. Are you saying basically what we need with perception is we need accuracy?
We do.
Yeah.
Yes, that's great. A great way of summarizing that.
And and what I think you kind of alluded to that I want to clarify is, are you saying that our perception should change over time as we grow?
It really depends. I mean, yes.
Because you mentioned
some things
stress tolerance.
Right. Some things you could hold on to. I mean, really, honestly, so much of it depends on your family of origin. And did you grow up in a healthy, loving, and we grew up with people as parents. So we all are going to have things that maybe they wish they did better, or, so there's no such thing as, he had a perfect upbringing.
Yeah.
So we've all got stuff because we were raised by human beings. And as we know, we're all imperfect. Yeah. We're all incredibly flawed. But saying that, so some things you could have that even in the most flawed families, some things could have been going very right. Mm-hmm. And we want to take that into our grown years and maybe use that when we approach adult life or we raise our own children. Some things we should really kind of take stock of. And is that something that is rooted in trauma for us, or rooted as something that gets triggered at stressful times that has nothing to do with today, nothing to do with this moment. Yeah. So that's going to, again, if we go towards like, how do we differentiate what's a big deal and a little deal? That's going to be huge for us to be able to go, wait a second, I'm going to put my own background, my own perceptions in check. I'm going to take a minute.
That's great.
Before I react.
Yeah.
And I'm going to think, okay, how am I doing at seeing things for what they really are right now?
Yeah.
And if you have a good friend, if you have a partner, if you have a mentor, somebody in your life, if you have a child that you have a good relationship with who can go, somebody who can say, this may not be your finer moment. Like this, maybe let's have dinner, or let's take 5. Mm-hmm. And if somebody can notice or say, or even if you can say, whoa, I think I need a moment and I need to touch base with, like I have a best friend, Suzanne. She's been in my world since I was like in my early 20s, and absolutely, she's somebody who, you pick up the phone, even though she lives on the other side of the country. We never stopped talking.
I got friends like that too.
But the one beautiful thing is we know each other so well that in a drop of a hat we can go like, I need 5. Can I have 5 minutes? Can you help me get my perspective back? And if you don't have somebody like that, don't feel a sense of lack.
Just call
or a sense of scarcity.
Nancy,
right? Exactly. Okay. No, call Gabe on his cell phone. No, I'm kidding. But but reach out, find somebody, whether that's somebody who is a coach or a counselor or a psychologist. Or if it's a friend, if you feel like, but I don't really look to other people for much. Try to figure out why you don't, and get to church, make some friends in community somehow, so that you actually can have somebody to bounce stuff off.
It's a little hard to benchmark if you're not around people that you trust, or that you. And I always think about, like, if you like the direction of somebody's life.
Yeah.
Maybe ask them for input.
Totally. Yeah, you've said that before. I love that. And I do like that. And, if you see somebody who has something you wish you had, whether that's a trait or whatever, and it's probably not a car, but if you have some
a character.
Character, exactly. Then just ask them about it. And, be bold and say, how did you get where you are today? How did you seem so confident? What did you do to get there? Or, and the funny thing is you'll probably hear, that's great. I am confident about certain things and not so much about others.
Yeah, and they'll probably start talking about their dragons that they've slayed in the past.
Exactly.
Too. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay, so you said perception and then...
So perception and differentiation.
Yeah.
So the differentiation, the idea of big deals versus little deals, dragons versus dandelions, using what we've thought about in terms of how we perceive events or perceive people and how they're behaving. Let's make sure that we are doing some honest differentiation, that we're not catastrophizing, that we're not, because of whatever reason, We have nothing in our gas tank.
Mm-hmm.
We, emotionally, physically, whatever, that we're not making everything a big deal. That we're not, like I said, catastrophizing.
Yeah.
Or if you are somebody who's like, I've got so much going on at work, I cannot take on what is perceived as my teenagers or my 12-year-old's big deal, because you have to always keep in mind it's all relative. So a big deal to a 12-year-old could be, I don't know, an equivalent of a big deal to an adult, but a much bigger deal.
They have to wear to school or something. Yeah.
Exactly, because their world is their experience base is so small, and so something social or that kind of stuff, it's huge. So you have to, because I've definitely have worked with parents who are absolutely running as fast as they can, flat out. Especially like I've got some single moms, and I've got some single some dads that are single and that are parenting on their own, and just or a husband or a wife who isn't feeling supported or whatever, that in those moments, just keep in mind that the other person still has their stuff and their perception. That your perception of their stuff may not be how you want to respond. Because if you come home from work and you've got your boss asking for 16 things, and then you've got to get dinner on the table and blah 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 blah, and then your 13-year-old had a problem with a student at one of their classmates or one of their at track practice today, and said something that really bothered them, but but you can't, even though in the scheme of life, that's a little deal, and we would put it in the little deal bucket, whichever one that one is there. But for them, they haven't yet learned to differentiate.
Yeah.
So that's interesting, because one of the things I do with families is I will actually use this as an exercise, and you can do this at home. You can actually do the bucket thing with big deal and little deal, and you can say, okay, we're going to throw a bunch of little pieces of paper on a table, and I want you to write down anything you can think of, everything you can think of that's a problem that could ever come up in our lives. And you just everybody starts grabbing them, and then you're going to go through and decide, is it a big deal or a little deal? And for one, mom and dad, that gives you a lot of insight into how your kids think.
So I'm taking it that the role of the parent is not to go, no, that's not it. Put that over there. You're going to let them make that decision.
You're going to try to understand in that moment. And then a developmental task after that as a parent is to have them start to see that it doesn't have to stay in the big deal bucket. What do we need to do? How do we need to fortify ourselves so that big deal, what that perceived big deal, becomes a little deal?
Well, okay, if we all, now I wish I had this exercise 20 years ago, but if we all worked like this on perception and differentiation, it seems like we would maybe have fewer dragons in our lives. Because I do think, in some ways, in fact, an interesting conversation point that you and I had was about, do all dragons start out as dandelions? And
yes.
I think you're strong.
I don't know that they do.
Right.
I don't know that they do because
some things are thrust upon you. They're from the outside, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
But certainly some, like even the example of a parent who has the choice: do I pay attention to my child right now who feels like their thing is a big deal,
right?
Or do I make them wait? Which you can do, right? But how many times is a teenager going to come to you with what they feel like is a big deal if you keep shutting it down?
Yeah, totally. And in that kind of situation,
it's a dragon.
Yeah, and then that kind of an event is what they're going to be tasked when I'm 95 and giving the same thing with you, about the same issue. That them as adults, they're going to think back to that when we think, how did we create our perceptions?
Yeah.
So because what our perceptions, how we walk through life and how we were raised, and then how the people that we invited into our life have treated us, et cetera, and how we have stayed centered or not so much through those times, influences how we then move forward and how we treat others and treat events.
Yeah.
So it's interesting because one of the things with this, so you make, you put in all the little deals and big deals, and then what you want to do is, and you can do this by yourself. You can also just be thinking, get a piece of paper, draw a line down it, big deal, little deal. What's happening in your life? Put it in that frame of reference. And then I want you on a new piece of paper or as a family to sit and say, okay, what would a healthy response pattern be if we're dealing with a big deal? Because we're going to come to consensus on what some really big deals are. And what would be a healthy response pattern? Like, what would we want to do? We'd want to ask for support. We'd want to make sure that we're getting good sleep, good food. We're, taking care of ourselves so that we have the wherewithal to be able to slay the dragon. Okay. And what would be a healthy response for little deals? Now, little deals come up all the time and they can be so varied. So you may have a much more generalized pattern of like, what do we do when we're dealing with little deals? Because there's, because how can you write down every single solitary event?
Yeah.
Like the bank teller didn't do whatever. There's just little deals all over the place.
Yeah.
But the more you think about that, I have had people that I've known, like, in my world, there was a guy that I knew ages ago that, like, literally everything was a big deal. And it's funny because what he would say is, why does everything always happen to me? Like, I went into McDonald's and they screwed up my order and then I blah, 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 blah. And he was so angry. And I was like, oh my gosh, your blood pressure, dude, chill. But it's funny how that perception of how he would see events seemed to perpetuate big deals coming up. Instead of like, and now I'm going to go to the third word, instead of holding yourself accountable, and really accountability can be three things, I think. In this instant, it could probably be a whole lot more. I'm no expert, but accountability to yourself, accountability to others, and accountability to God. And it could be, again, a higher power, whatever if you're new to Christ, then maybe you're not there yet, but I'm going to use this terminology because that's where I'm at. Okay. So it's an accountability to ourselves. What part are we playing in a communication with others, in whether it's a healthy one or not? What patterns, what part are we playing in terms of patterns of behavior? What part am I playing in terms of how I react if somebody does something that hits a trigger that has nothing to do with them, but has to do with, feeling insecurity in certain situations from when you were a child or whatever, that kind of thing. So it's an accountability to really, I guess, evaluate in the moment. Am I handling this? Am I being the best me in how I'm coming to this? Okay. Accountability to others. Are we allowing other people the grace to be human? Again, if we're all imperfect beings, then are we coming into something? Are we giving our husband, our wife, are we giving our kids, the teacher, who's upset with your child? Are we giving people grace to be flawed? Or are we expecting them to be perfect? And if we are not doing what we need to do to be fair, and almost it's hey, we can go back to the old adage of do unto others as we'd like to be done to us. If we're holding somebody in a place that we would not want to be held ourselves, boy, then we need to kind of keep that in check. There's an accountability to that.
Do you have any help for somebody who's really, they want to grow in empathy? They want to not be so hot-headed when things happen. They want to not make assumptions or say things about people, but they're struggling with that. Do you have any help for how do you grow in this thing of that golden rule, in those moments? Because I think emotion really gets the best of a lot of us in those things.
Absolutely. And And I think, again, I know that I've said this. If you guys have listened to any of my podcasts before, you might be hearing me say something the same again. But some of this is just is worthy of saying again. And that is that feelings are transient. We have to remember feelings come and they go. If we react in feelings and we don't react with our thinker engaged, our brain, if we're not actually actively using our thinker and we're just using our feeler, we are likely going to set ourselves up for a mini disaster, or at least a result that we actually didn't want, unless it's like Valentine's Day and you're going, oh, I love you so much. Okay, fine. Then feel all you want. But if we're talking about the stressors in life, the 100%, let's check our emotion, whether you want to say check our emotion at the door or just check our emotion. So that is the emotion overriding our ability to think right now. If it is, take a break. If it is, do what you need to do, journal, talk to people, get yourself to a place of a more balanced perspective so that you can come at something with the intelligence you have. You may think, but I'm not smart enough to do this. I hear this all the time. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't have any idea. But we also, if we're flooded, if we're seeing red, if we're flooded with emotion, whether that's sadness or anger, we aren't even able to employ our thinker to know what we have. So when we say, I don't know how to do this, I have no idea. There's no way I can figure this out. Yes. The funny thing is, I've rarely ever had a situation, unless it's like, I want to know how to speak Russian today, but I've never taken a Russian class. Okay, fine. But everything else, like that's common in life, people do somewhere. Like, can I control myself? Can I actually give somebody the grace to speak when they're saying something that's completely and utterly stupid and false and hot-headed and all of that? Yes, I'm sure that you have. Try to think of where is it that you have done this, because most people have done it somewhere. It's usually in a high stock place, like with
Stakes
a
are high.
girlfriend or a boyfriend who you don't want to think you're completely unreasonable or whatever. Just think of where is it when you're at work, but not at home. Where have you done whatever you're asking of yourself right now and done it successfully? And then let's figure out how to replicate that or make it happen in another environment.
That's great. Okay.
And then one last thing.
Yeah. With God.
Accountability to God. And is that what you're going to say?
I was good.
And that is, to me, again, the driving force for me is, am I living more Christ-like every day? And that is so grounding. And what does it mean? Even if you are new to Christ, I mean, it is going to be am I acting in kindness, compassion, without judgment, with a drive to understand.
Yeah.
And not just react or decide. Being forgiving, even if it means you're not going to forget, but being forgiving. And then being loving regardless, and letting go of our stuff. Stop looking in so much and look out. And I don't mean that to a fault, because some people can look out so much that they're not even taking care of themselves. And I don't mean that. I just mean, if you are dwelling on the woe is me, if you're living in scarcity, if you're living in look at all that I don't have, look at all that works out for other people, but not me. Then let's find out, where is it that you actually have some abundance or some plenty? And let's try to remember some of those things.
Thank you so much, Nancy.
Absolutely, Gabe. Love being here. Take care, guys.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Midweek Motivation. To make sure you don't miss any content in the future, please subscribe, share, and if you enjoyed this, give us a like. And consider popping by a Westside service some weekend. You can find out more at westsidecommunitychurch.com.